Alright everyone, it's the video you've all been waiting for. My first-hand experience of getting back into Japan. I've covered Japan's entry policies for the past few months with countless hours of research and phone calls. However, I'm more of a hands-on kind of learner. So to put everyone's worries to rest once and for all, I documented my entire process of getting back into Japan after it reopened. I booked this round-trip flight to get back into Japan just for you all. And possibly because I'm returning from a 2-week vacation in Europe. Either way, I will cover everything. Starting with how the airlines handle the initial entry screening, to what happens after you land in Japan, and of course, the dreaded part where they scrutinize your COVID documents. But wait, I added a twist to it as well. To make sure I thoroughly covered the topic of entering Japan, my girlfriend, Matilda, used the MySOS app and proof of her vaccinations to get in. But for me, I put my money where my mouth is, and did not download the MySOS app or provide proof of my vaccinations. Instead, I did a PCR test and used only physical copies of my documentation to get in. This way we had one of us using the recommended fast track system to get in, and then had the other person use the slowest method possible. Will the fast track method actually be faster? Did I get in trouble for not having my SOS app ready to go? The results of our little entry experiment might surprise you, so stick around to see how it went and also see my conclusion on the matter. Well, I don't want to keep you in suspense any longer, so let's get to it. For this video's flight, we started in Paris and had a 13-hour trek ahead of us to Narita Airport, which is located outside of Tokyo, Japan. Now, one quick side note. I'm not sure how busy flights to Japan are back in the States or the rest of the world. Let me know in the comments below. But in Paris, I was really surprised. The flight for Tokyo was absolutely packed. I was curious if all these people found out Japan was open and were bound for Tokyo, or if this was just a connecting flight. But I figured we'd get that answer when we landed. Anyway, before we even boarded the plane, the attendants at the gate stopped each person to make sure they had the required documents. Those documents being your passport, your flight ticket, and then your MySOS app. This is what you should expect for any flight into Japan for the foreseeable future, as I went through the same process last year. For Matilda, it was pretty easy. Because she already completed her MySOS app and got all her documents pre-approved, which is indicated by a blue screen on the app, all she had to do was flash the screen to the attendant and she was let in. However, since I was pretending to live in the Stone Age and didn't have my app prepared, and also didn't have my proof of vaccination, I had to show my PCR test paperwork. For this, I took the opportunity to try a small experiment. Instead of showing Japan's pre-made form for PCR tests, I showed the certificate that was provided by the site where I got my test from. Now, to give some background, I got my PCR test done in Denmark, and I gotta hand it to Denmark because they have a very professional PCR test certificate. Despite this, I brought the Japanese form to the test site and had them fill out all the information just in case. And it's a good thing I did. Even though Denmark had this great looking test form, the attendant put it under extreme scrutiny. When I realized they were gonna stare at this form for 10 minutes, I pulled out Japan's PCR test form to see if they would treat it differently. Sure enough, as soon as they saw the Japanese form, they spent 10 seconds looking at it, gave me the okay, and I was on board. So already, one of the important lessons to take away from this situation is this. Always use Japan's entry forms and PCR test forms. They are trained to see Japan's way of displaying information and showing PCR test results. If you show them another test form they're not used to, they will not be able to locate all the information quickly, thus making it take a lot more time. Anyways, once we got on the plane, it was business as usual. We sat in our cramped seats for 13 hours and waited to land. Now that we've gotten on the plane, let's fast forward to what it was like when we landed. After we landed, the flight crew instructed everyone that had a connecting flight to stand up and exit the plane first, and then people debarking and staying in Tokyo to exit last. And here's where I got the answer to my earlier question. When this request was made, almost 90% of the passengers stood up to get ready to leave, which meant 90% of the passengers were going on a connecting flight. This tells me it'll be a while before they get full flights to Japan once again. Once they left, the remaining few of us debarked the plane, and this is where it got interesting. To start off, we were funneled into this tight line to proceed to the first checkpoint. When we got to this first checkpoint, they instructed everyone to have their MySOS app ready to show. Okay, makes sense. But then they asked for the same thing at 2 more checkpoints. As to why, I have no idea. They could have asked us to prepare it just once and then keep on going. Anyway, the next important station we ran into separated people into two groups. People who had the app and ready to show, and people who did not have it installed or ready to show. Now, once again, since Matilda had her app ready and showing blue, she was able to proceed no problem. I'll get more into how her process went later on. But as for me, since I didn't have the app installed, I had to go into the other group. In this group, I'll call this the MySOS Prison group. They sat us down and made everyone download the app, put in all the required information, and fill out the questionnaire. At least they had free Wi-Fi for people that didn't have a cell phone plan in Japan. However, they wouldn't let anyone leave the MySOS prison until they could at least show a yellow color code on their app, representing that they had put in all their information and were in the review stage. Now, I figured this would serve some purpose later on, but I soon found out how wrong I was. After I completed filling my information in for the app, I proceeded to the next station. Here they checked my QR code to make sure all the information was put in, and then checked my physical paperwork anyways. So that reinforces to always have physical or digital copies of your certificates as backup. Once I passed that inspection, I was given a few pieces of paper and then told to proceed to the second inspection window. I was curious what they would check at the second window because they already inspected everything once. And after going down 2 flights of stairs, I quickly found out. After waiting in another line, I proceeded to the second window where, you guessed it, they checked the same items again. The difference was when I passed the second inspection, I was given a little blue paper, which I handed to someone that was literally right next to the person I got the paper from. But once I did that, that was it. I was clear of all the COVID hurdles. However, since I had spent so much time getting through all the COVID obstacles, by the time I actually got to the immigration line, it was insanely long. But good thing I was able to go through the residence line, or I would have been stuck in the visitors line for at least an hour. As for Matilda, when I finally caught up to her, she gave me her version of entering Japan. All that really happened for her was, she showed her MySOS app which had a blue code, and was directed to only one inspection window. This window is the second one I had to go to for my entry. After that, she was clear of all the COVID requirements, and was able to get to immigration in only 5 to 10 minutes. Overall, her entry into Japan was truly a fast-track process. Alright, now that we've gone over the whole entry process, it's time to share my thoughts on the whole ordeal. After going through the entire entry process and seeing it both ways, I would say this about entering Japan. While it is true you can get to Japan without MySOS or the Fast Track app ready to go, I highly recommend using it. Matilda was able to get into Japan in less than 10 minutes because everything was prepared and pre-approved on her Fast Track app. And because of this, she was able to skip all the long lines before they had a chance to build up. As for me, clearing all the COVID requirements took me about 20 to 30 minutes, which is double the amount of time it took for Matilda to get in. And that's not including getting stuck in a long immigration line because all the COVID requirements took so long to clear. This all leads to the big question. Was it easy to get into Japan? And the answer is yes, as long as you have all your information entered and pre-approved. If you don't, it will still be easy to get in, but just with many more hurdles to cross and much more time wasted. Along with this, there are some important lessons to share if you plan on entering Japan in the near future. The biggest lesson is to make sure you use Japan's entry forms and PCR test forms to make the whole process a lot smoother. If you use any other form, they will put it under much more scrutiny and overall make your process of getting into Japan much slower. For Japan's pre-made forms, refer to the link I provided in the description below. The other big lesson is to make sure you always have your physical or digital copies of your vaccine certificates or PCR test results as a backup. Even though I put all my information on the SOS app, they still checked all the physical documentation to make sure it matched. While I could go on about how Japan's COVID process was convoluted and had many inefficiencies, like why did they make me hand a blue paper to someone that was right next to the person that gave it to me, I would like to hear your thoughts on the whole process instead. Let me know in the comments below. Either way, it seems Japan is aware of these issues and is trying to make the whole process easier in the near future, because starting November 1st, anyone with a trip to Japan after November 14th will use another app instead called Visit Japan. I will go more into detail on this in a future video, as there's some new important entry information to discuss. But either way, that's gonna do it for now. Like the video to share this information with everyone else, and subscribe for more Japan content. Alright, well, until next time, I'll see you then.